I'm delighted to share the pulpit this morning with our friends and guests from Planned Parenthood for two reasons. First, I've been a supporter of Planned Parenthood for eons, since the late Jurassic, when I first heard of this essential organization. Then second, their slogan, "Every child a wanted child," is the theme of my reflection today. I want to emphasize that as an anthropologist and as a feminist, I totally support the rights of women to control their own bodies and to avail themselves of the choices and chances that implies. I also recognize that marginalized women will suffer most if Roe v. Wade is dismantled, and will likely die at the hands, and will be most likely to die at the hands of illegal abortionists. In New York City, before Roe v. Wade, 94% of the women who died in illegal abortions were either Black or Puerto Rican. Women who are middle class, who have financial resources, and who know how to network the system will probably be able to get abortions. In this morning's reflection, I want to add in another consideration, not more important than the rights, choices, chances, lives, and deaths of women, but significant also. The Planned Parenthood slogan has great anthropological meaning. What are the implications for everyone in the culture if it is flooded by huge numbers of unwanted children? I want to start with a flat statement which will probably elicit general agreement. Even with the delight of watching a brand new wanted child develop, parenting, guiding 46 strings of potentially human DNA into a fully developed person, parenting is a lot of work. It requires love, of course, but also patience, energy, time management skills, good judgment, some introspection, I did a lot of that, sensitivity, flexibility, and let's emphasize again, love, patience, and energy. How come is this all so difficult? After all, wasps, and here I mean the six-legged kind that sting, have their own 12-step program of mating, nest building, and reproduction. They don't seem to work at it really much, and the class Insecta is a very successful life form. The crucial difference between us and them is that their reproductive sequence is completely encoded in the genetically controlled chemistry of the wasps. They need only to grow up, find nesting materials, and of course another wasp, and they're good to go. Wasps have instincts, complex, genetically determined behavioral responses. We do not. There's no such thing in humans as natural parenting. Humans, female and male, have to learn parenting behavior. There's nothing strange about this, because our closest relatives, our closest evolutionary relatives, the great apes, and our next closest, the cercopithecoid monkeys, don't let that word bother you. Those are names that you already know. Baboons, rhesus, macaques. All these learn maternal and where paternal, relevant paternal behavior. Just one example you might like. A large, arrogant, alpha male macaque will patiently sit, grimacing in pain, while a clumsy baby practices its grooming skills. Learning to groom without pulling. We're not alone in the order Primates in reliance upon learning. We're just its extreme fringe. The reason that culturally learned behavior seems natural to us is that that is the way culture works. It is so early, so continuous, so pervasive, with 3 different learning strategies, and from such a wide variety of sources, that we are unaware that we're learning. If a woman wants a baby and has been herself a recipient and observer of nurturant behavior, chances are she'll be able to engage in such behavior herself, and she will imagine that it came naturally to her. Even if she has been neglected or abused, all is not lost, because humans learn vicariously through a system of symbols, the most important of which is language. A woman who wants the baby can, by observation, conversation, parenting classes, seeking advice, reading about motherhood and child development, can deliberately transform herself into a nurturant parent. But motivation and intent are required. She has to want the baby in the first place. If we look at what a baby arrives at with, although it does not have complex, genetically determined behavioral responses, it is far from a blank slate. We inherit developmental patterns, which are human universals: smiling, turning over, babbling, sitting up, crawling, pulling up, walking, stages of language. It is important to notice, though, that with neglected or abused children, these developmental thresholds can be very much delayed. We also arrived with generalized potentials, differences in chemistry, in energy level, metabolic speeds, and doubtless many others which can then affect behavior and temperament. Anyone who has ever seen a hospital nursery has noticed that even newborns are all different. Anyone who has had more than one child knows that not only are they different from each other, they are different from the parents whose sperm and ova produced them. Some of these differences mean that for some parents, in some families, some children are harder and more exhausting to nurture, and some children are harder to raise. Suppose a woman who was forced to have a baby in the first place gets, in the luck of the genetic draw, one of these difficult children. What chance does she have to give or the baby to receive the loving care it needs? I do not have enough control over enough data to speak confidently about the frequencies of child abuse or neglect among unwanted children. But it seems probable to me that a woman who wanted the baby would be less likely to abuse it or permit anyone else to do so. Similarly, I'm not sure that there is any one source of compiled evidence of the effect of neglect and abuse on adult behavior. But I think insights from Unitarian Universalism and anthropology come together. Our previous minister, Brian Jessup, said frequently, "Hurt people hurt people." And as an anthropologist, I would point out, less succinctly and elegantly, that since we are so reliant upon learned behavior, a neglected or abused child might have less opportunity to learn the valued behaviors in its culture, and more likelihood for developing antisocial patterns. I close with 2 contrasting delivery room stories. The first is my own, when my daughter was born more than 60 years ago. She was very much wanted by both her father and by me. And after 60 years, I can still reconstruct in my mind the sound of her first cry. Muffled, sort of rounded tones rather than staccato, rather deep than shrill. And I remember vividly telling her how much I loved and wanted her, and her father saying the same thing. Two ecstatic parents, one of them awash in endorphins. The second is different. A student of mine was a delivery room nurse. She confided that she had been avidly anti-choice. Then one morning, a baby was born, a little boy. And when he voiced his first cry, the woman who gave birth to him screamed at him, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." My student told me that in that moment, she became pro-choice, realizing that the chances of that baby receiving the love, care, and patience it would need, he will need, were slim to none. Here is what is at stake. Will babies be born to women forced to have them, who realistically know they cannot care for them? Those babies growing up, possibly, probably, cherished by no one. Or will babies enter the world joyfully welcomed by at least one person? That is what is at stake.
From our virtual campus, I am honored to welcome my colleague and fellow Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Kelly Clement from First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And let's be sure to bring the lights down.
Learn to tell your story. My most impactful life decisions in chronological order: to have abortions when I needed them, to get sober, to give birth to our child. If each life is precious, so is mine, so is theirs, so is yours. I do not regret nor feel shameful about my abortions. Rather, I am grateful for access to abortion care by compassionate, professional providers, and for, as Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison has said, the opportunity to captain my own ship. A wish list for all of us, especially my adult child's generation. Robust reproductive justice, health, and freedom without stigma or restriction. An end to heteronormative, patriarchal, white supremacy culture. And love and liberation in abundance. May it be so.
May it be so. Reverend Darcy Baxter, a Unitarian Universalist minister, would like to introduce us to Melissa. Reverend Baxter writes, Melissa lived in a big Midwestern state. She had little money, 2 kids, and an unplanned pregnancy. The closest abortion provider was over 500 miles away. Even though Melissa was enrolled in Medicaid, both federal and local government forbade using tax dollars for abortion services. Now, technically, Melissa had the legal right to have an abortion. In practice, she did not have access to the means that could make that right a reality. Reproductive justice is both a concept and a movement that calls on us to focus on a woman's lived realities and the complex interdependent web of circumstances that must exist for her to exercise what we call rights. Yes, women need legal rights to abortion, something that is under unprecedented attack at the state and the Supreme Court level. But they need a lot more than just access to safe and legal abortions in order to have an honest-to-God choice. Reverend Baxter continues, I'm not so sure Melissa would have been considering an abortion if she had known she would have the basic resources to raise her child well. The number one reason cited by women I counseled for having an abortion was money. What would have given Melissa a real choice? The guarantee of good child care, a safe neighborhood, quality health care, and a good education for her child. Cornel West tells us that justice is what love looks like in public, and justice provides resources. And in this country and in the Central Valley, there is an immoral lack of justice for the most vulnerable among us, including Black, Latino, and Indigenous communities, young people, the disabled, and those with limited financial resources. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe there is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. But sometimes that love feels threatened. Sometimes, for some of us, that love is in short supply or far removed. Sometimes we just need to be reminded of that love. So for a moment, let's step away from public policy. We'll be back to it. For a moment, let's step away from power-hoarding politicians and unfairly seated Supreme Court justices who care more about an unborn fetus in the womb than a living child outside the womb. For a moment, let's bring love front and center. With these words, adapted from Unitarian Universalist minister, the Reverend Greta Jo Cito. If you have had an abortion, you are loved. Eres amado. If you've never told a soul, or if you share your story regularly, you are loved. Eres amado. If you are confident in your decision or wonder if it was the right choice, you are loved. Eres amado. If your choice was driven by medical viability or your own emotional health, you are loved. Eres amado. If you found a provider to care for you or had to rely on yourself, you are loved. Eres amado. If you are always pro-choice, or if your choice conflicts with your beliefs, you are loved. Eres amado. If you were unable to have access to an abortion and you raised your child, or if you allowed your child to be adopted by those who would care for them, you are loved. Eres amado. If you believe God loves you, or you believe in nothing divine at all, you are loved. Eres amado. If you find yourself reflected here, or your truth is more than words can contain, you are loved. Que así sea. Bendito sea. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. From our virtual campus, I'm pleased to welcome Dominican actor, writer, director, and activist Lara Gomez, best known for her work in the hit TV series Orange is the New Black, and for her stage work in New York City at the Spanish Repertory Theater.
Did you know that there was once a time when abortion methods were sold in drugstores and advertised in newspapers? Not the shame and stigma we see today. A person's decision to end a pregnancy was respected as their own. That all changed in the 19th century, when the male-led medical establishment edged out caregiving women and took over childbirth. Abortions were soon illegal and often dangerous, until 1973, when the Supreme Court declared abortion a protected right. Access was by no means equal, and still isn't, but abortion was finally safe and legal across the country. People could make decisions about their futures and their bodies, thanks to a case called Roe versus Wade. Ever since then, the right to abortion has been challenged. From protesters to politicians, people have used their personal beliefs to make it harder and harder for many of us to get the health care we need. After all, abortion is so common, nearly 1 in 4 women have had one. And 80% of Americans believe it should be legal. The right to access abortion has been hijacked by an organized campaign of bogus restrictions, shameful stigma, and cruel bills. And these harsh regulations mostly hurt people who are already vulnerable because of systemic racism and discrimination. Communities of color, young folks, and people with low incomes. We've seen a lot of shit, but we've never seen anything like this. These abortion bans are real, and they're spreading all over the country. Just this year, over 100 restrictions were put in place across the US. And if that's not bad enough, the Supreme Court, those folks who once protected our ability to make our own decisions, are set to reconsider if abortion should remain a constitutional right at all. This is not a drill. It isn't a theory or something happening somewhere far, far away. It's here and it's now. It's about you, your friends, your mom and sister and kids. It's about all of us. This is your moment to get involved, to fight back for yourself, for your community. Join us.
Red state after red state is restricting or banning access to abortion. Offering a counterbalance here in California, we need to think about this question. What does a reproductive justice state look like? I'm pleased to welcome from our virtual campus, Lara Babb, Vice President of Public Affairs at Planned Parenthood Marmonte, who's joined by some friends of Planned Parenthood.
We'll have achieved reproductive freedom when everyone from different backgrounds has easy access to quality health care.
What a freedom reproductive state looks like to me is one where becoming a parent is a choice and not an accident.
To me, having reproductive freedom means having access to a medically, socially, or emotionally necessary abortion.
Well, for me, it means banning protesters that are outside Planned Parenthoods and abortion clinics.
Being able to just have that choice to make a decision for myself and my own body.
A reproductive freedom state can look like many things, but it always feels safe.
Hi, I'm Lauren Babb, Vice President of Public Affairs for Planned Parenthood Miramonte. A reproductive freedom state is a state that guarantees the right to privacy and access to abortion care. Here in California, Governor Newsom has proclaimed that California is a reproductive freedom state for all. So those who visit us should have access to abortions and reproductive health no matter what. Our goal to continue this reproductive freedom state is to advance investments in abortion providers and also make sure that the community has access to the resources that they need, even if they can't get it in Texas or my home state of Michigan. We are all working together to make sure our policies are in line so that everyone has access to safe, legal abortion care.
Why is it so important for California to stand up as a reproductive freedom state?
So California is known as the beacon of innovation when it comes to policy, and we know that. And so we are using our very progressive legislature to make sure that people have access to care no matter what. And our goal is to go above and beyond in the policy space so that other states may be able to create them in their own areas. But given the setup of the Supreme Court, we are unsure where things could go next, and all we can do is make sure that the folks in California have access no matter what, and those that visit us also have the same rights and protections of the people that live here.
How will California's status as a reproductive freedom state affect patients here in-state?
California being a reproductive freedom state impacts our patients here in California by allowing better investment in care, better investment in our providers, and making sure that we have providers of color, also making sure we can expand our services near transportation hubs, and making sure that we're addressing the abortion deserts within our own affiliate area. With the state's investment in abortion care, we will be able to provide more care timely and in different ways to make sure that folks have access, whether that's through telehealth, whether that's through coming into a clinic, making sure people have options so that they feel like they have a place to go when they need to the most.
How can we address the challenge of underserved communities throughout California?
Here in California, there are places that don't have access to a lot of health care. We need to make sure that we are increasing access to care by providing more options and providers in those areas so that folks are able to get the care they need when they need it. We certainly know that there will be an influx of folks from other states, and we want to make sure that we can meet the demand of the folks coming here, but also make the patient experience better for Californians.
What are the next steps for Planned Parenthood Marmonte?
Of course, the next steps in this fight to make sure that people have access in the reproductive freedom state is to make sure that the policies that come out of next legislative session invest in abortion care, invest in practical support, invest in our infrastructure so that we are able to meet the challenges and demand that we may have in the future. No one knows what's next, but we definitely are going to gear up and be ready to provide care no matter what.
Please join me in saying together those staggering statistics. 26 states are likely to enact a total ban on abortion. The number of out-of-state women of reproductive age who would find their next clinic in California would increase from 40,000 to 1.4 million. That's an increase of almost 300%. I am honored, as our final reflector, to welcome my friend and fellow activist for safe and easy access to health care and abortion for all, Socorro Santillan. Planned Parenthood Marmonte.
Good morning, everybody. So, just a couple of minutes, I almost didn't make it up here. It was kind of rough going through some tough times with my mama sick, but I told myself, you know, she wanted me up here. You know, when I was 3 years old, she came from Mexico over here, and the reason she came over here is because she had 14 kids, 8 of them females. And she looked around and she thought, what are my daughters going to do in this country? What kind of living are they going to have? And at that moment, against my father's wishes, she made sure that she brought us to this country. I didn't hear this story until about 2 years ago, and then it all made sense, because I couldn't figure out where the hell did I get the cojones I have. You know, how did I become the feminist that I am, coming from, you know, a strong Catholic background, very traditional, fill up the first 2 rows at our church every Sunday. I could have swore God knew our names one by one. And, you know, I realize now why she made that trip and what my purpose is in life is. I can tell you that I've been impacted positively by Planned Parenthood as many other individuals, folks. And the way, this has came about is, being in college and, senior year and finding out that you're pregnant. I went to the health center, and my then boyfriend, my husband now, we went and we were told we were pregnant. And there's just no way on earth that we could have a child at that time. I had lost my job 4 months before that, had no health care, no money, was literally having yard sales, selling off any item I could to continue living because I was going to school full time. And even though I had worked all my life since I was 13, unemployment was not available to me because I chose to get an education. And so I went to Planned Parenthood, and they did a pregnancy test, and they said, no, you're not pregnant. And I argued and begged because, I was told I was pregnant. They did a blood test, and I wasn't pregnant, or at least not anymore. And I told myself, we were ready to make the decision to terminate, but I didn't want it, or didn't need to be in that situation. And again, my husband and I got on birth control, and it wasn't until 6 years later when I was well established in the community, had a good job, both of us, that we decided, okay, it's time now. And we had our first child, and we had our second child, and we had our third child. And then I had a duplication because I realized I love babies. And I'm just like my mama, and the minute they come out, I forget of all the pain, and then I want another one. So, but the purpose I'm sharing this with you is not just to get personal or give too much information, but it is because I had the right to make the decision to lay the foundation to where my life would lead, the kind of family I would have. I can tell you, we're not perfect parents, but our kids say we are. And we feel that we love our children, we protect our children, just like Cindy said, because they were wanted children. Because every time, I was smart enough to know I'm ovulating, we're gonna have a baby if this happens. And we made a choice, and we brought a child to this world. And with that in mind, every decision that my husband and I have made, we always think back, we chose them. So they deserve the best. And the best means loving them unconditionally and protecting them. And I can tell you that my story is not unique to a lot of the folks that work at Planned Parenthood. Tim said, talk about why it makes you upset or angry. And this is the reason, because when you work at Planned Parenthood, it's not just a job, it can't be. Because you have to, day in, day out, against the world, defend what you're doing. And you can't do it just because you're getting a paycheck, because that will wear you down. You have to do it because you genuinely have a passion and believe in what you do. And I believe in what I do. And so when I have to take, name calling or attacks from the antis, I do it with pride because I believe in what I'm doing. I believe that every person should have the right to make their decisions, not the government, not individuals based on their personal opinions. Every individual should have that right because it makes you a stronger individual and you know what's best for yourself. So it's heartbreaking. And I do take it personal whenever I hear another state banned abortion because they're doing this solely on their beliefs, on not what is good for the overall community, not what the overall community wants. When you look at the United States and 77% of the population is telling you that they support abortion, how can you, with a clear conscience, vote to ban abortions and say that you're doing it for the good of the people? It's just not possible. So I do get angry and I get upset and I go back out there and do it again. Because every person has the right. I have 2 daughters and a son. And I want them, if ever needed, for them to have the right to make their own decisions. Not anybody else, but them, based on what their parents taught them, on the values and ethics that we put in them, not what society is trying to force on them. So when we look at these states that are continuing to ban abortion and put restrictions, on birth control, what keeps me going is the fact that I know that there's folks out there like you that also align with these beliefs, that also believe that individuals should have all the information that they need to make healthy decisions for themselves. And what gives me hope is right down the road, Visalia. I don't know if you guys have been watching the news, but it's been a little crazy out there. We have a health center out there that we were looking to expand, that our folks have been asking us to expand because they need that health care, because we have half of our patients from Visalia driving to Fresno and to Bakersfield to get their health care. It shouldn't be. And yet, when we were just close to getting our conditional permit to expand that location, somebody from City Council decided, our antis need to hear about this. They need to mobilize. And so now we have a fight in Visalia. But what gives me hope is the fact that 255 comments and emails went to City Council. 155 of those were from folks that support Planned Parenthood. We had over 25 partner organizations that signed on to our letter. We had folks sending in letters without even us requesting to City Council. We had folks calling us saying, do you want me to write an op-ed? Do you want me to write a letter to the editor? Do you want me to show up? That's what gives me hope. The fact that even in the Central Valley, where many folks feel that this is Blue Valley, we know that's not the truth. And we know that individuals will fight when needed. With that said, your city of Fresno, this last week, the mayor had a rally against a resolution that I had requested from the City Council, a reproductive freedom resolution, basically saying that as a city, we believe in reproductive freedom and that we would protect it. Again, the antis got a hold of this. The mayor, City Council Bradfield, had a rally and decided that not in their city. This is not their city. This is our city. And there's a petition outside for each one of you to sign on to let them know that they don't speak for all of us, that we speak for ourselves. That's what gives me confidence. That's what gives me hope, is that we have you and many others that are here that are going to protect. So when you get a chance, sign the petition. We have signs that we're going to send to the City Council. Sign those. And, be proud that you protect us. Advocate. Whenever you hear someone saying something that's misleading about Planned Parenthood, be an advocate. Correct them. Because the truth is that we do more than abortions, yes. What you're not going to hear is me brag about that we do more than abortion, because even if abortion is only 3% of what we do, it is the most important thing that we do, because people need it, because it saves lives, and it makes the world a better place for individuals when they're making their own decisions. So thank you.